Alright everyone, this is Dreamlicker again. Eh, Good God, I apologize. Anyways, this is a basic tutorial on how to create a script. In particular, I'm going to do a mining script because in my first video I already made this and I don't feel like making anything else. Anyways, if you followed the first video, you know how to get here. If you didn't watch the first video and you don't know how to get here, go watch it. So, to begin, I personally like to store my state as an integer. This allows you, in your loop, to say if your state is equal to a number, then we're going to execute a certain action. Um, Damn you, IntelliJ. Um, so, with a miner, I'm just going to do mining and dropping. Um, but in in your on loop, you want to have this kind of structure, in my opinion at least. So that's just saying whenever this integer is 0, then we're going to do the mine method. And if it's 1, then we're going to do the drop method. So we're going to make the mine method here. We're going to make the drop method here. And now you can see that these are no longer red, so it's interacting. But you want to do something like this. Well, actually, first, I would say this. You want to take advantage of the fact that your script's going to be looping. And what I mean by this is to take advantage of the loop to where in your logic in your code, I see a lot of scripters trying to handle everything in almost a linear fashion, and that's not really what you want to do. So the very first statement in my mine method would be this. If your inventory is not full, and this is because the one condition that is going to be true to where we don't want to be mining is if your inventory is full, obviously. So if your inventory is full, then we set state to be equal to 1. And then it finishes the mine method, which there will be nothing else left, go back into on loop, and go into this if statement and say, okay, we're supposed to be dropping now, and it'll start dropping. And wonderfully enough, we can just say drop all except, and use a filter to select what we don't want to drop. So this line is saying drop everything if the name does not contain pickaxe. And remember that Java is case sensitive, and the game is case sensitive, so if you type in pickaxe with a capital P and that's not in the name of the item, then it's going to drop it. But if we do this, then it's just going to repeatedly try to do that. So if your inventory doesn't contain any of your ores, then we're going to do that. However, we don't have anything set as ores. In fact, I'm going to make that ore just to make it a little more clear. But we're going to make a string called ore. Another important method to take advantage of is onStart. This runs immediately when the script starts. So we're going to set ore to be copper ore right here. And if you're creating a script, you want to do this through your GUI. I'll cover that in a later video. It's a bit more advanced. But for basic scripts, you can go in here and just change this as you need it. But yeah, that's literally all you do in the drop method. But make sure you also have something to change your state back. And that's all you need for that. It's very simple. Dropping is like the easiest thing you can do in the game. But now we want to have a game object. Game objects are anything in the game that is just, out there, like trees, ores, everything. We'll call it rock. So, with a mining script, something important to think about is that every ore is called rocks, or rock, or something like that. I don't know, let's see. Yeah, rocks. So, the hardest part is to get your script to actually mine what you want it to mine. So, the way that I've handled this in my open source miner is through the GUI, you select the rocks that you want, and it records that as an array list of game objects, and then the main class interacts with that. But for this, you don't care about that, and you're going to go mine everything. So we're going to set our rock to the closest game object that contains the name rock. Now, if your rock isn't null, because if you try to interact with a null object, you'll get an error, obviously. And then, if it's not null, we're going to interact with it, and say we're going to mine on it. If you do interact without anything in the parameter, it'll just left-click on the object and do whatever action that is. But in my opinion, you should always explicitly use the action unless you're doing a very special case. And we don't need an else statement here, because if the rock is null, it's just going to go back through the loop, and it's going to try to find another rock. But now we're going to use something that Dreambot has called sleep until. And we're going to use a filter here because Java 8 is awesome. And we're going to sleep until your inventory's count of your ore is greater than the count that we're going to record. And we'll use this method. Jesus Christ. I think this is it. I use a custom one. I believe this generates a random value from whatever you put it in. So, sleep until says, we're going to wait until this condition is true, unless we surpass this amount of time. If we surpass this amount of time, it's going to break out of the sleep, and it's going to keep looping. So to be more realistic, we're going to put 2,000 milliseconds to 3,000 milliseconds. It's probably going to take longer to mine than that, so you can kind of just put whatever the fuck you want in there. It doesn't really matter. But to make this work, we also need an integer called count. At the beginning of the script, we also want to make sure count is 0 and state is 0, or whatever your beginning state is going to be. Yeah, so now you can see count is going to work. So after you mine, you get something in your inventory. It's going to say, okay, our count of that's now 1, but the integer count is 0. So it breaks out of it because you've completed the mining. However, now you want to do count plus plus. Or, if you think about it, if we exceed this time, then it actually hasn't mined anything. So to fix this, you could either do something ridiculous like that, make it wait 22 to 23 seconds, or you can say, if your inventory's count of your ore is greater than count, then we increment it. And that's probably the best thing to do. You never really want to have your you never really just want to say something like this without an if statement, because you always want to make sure you're doing the correct thing in your script, otherwise it can cause lots of issues. But another important thing to note is that most of the methods in the Dreambot API return a Boolean value as to whether or not they were successful. So if we want to be really strict about what our script does, you put your interact or whatever you're going to do in an if statement, and then enclose whatever you do after you interact in that if statement. So this says, if the rock isn't null, and if we successfully interact with it, then we sleep. Otherwise, it just keeps going through the loop and tries to do it again. And that's really all you need. obviously this is not, a very complicated script. It's not really going to be useful because it's just going to mine rocks, any rocks that are anywhere near you. Oh, I also forgot about this. So your on loop is an integer method. And the integer that it returns is the amount of time to wait after it has completed the loop. So it goes through everything inside of the method, and it hits this and it says, okay, how long before I loop again? So you want to do some kind of random value, and we'll just say 500 to 1000, so it'll wait half of a second to a second before executing again. This is important because if you have this being a static or a constant value, that's very patterned and very easy for, for jagex to detect, I think, at least. No one really knows. Anyone who says they know, they're lying. Or they work for jagex. But hopefully this was informative. I did not plan this at all, so this might be absolutely useless. But let me know, and have a good day.